For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, where we talk about the continual pursuit of the section hiker.
And I'll spread the word, and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
I am excited to announce that the podcast episodes that are specific to the Mountains to Sea Trail are now being sponsored by the MST Guide by Pocket Trails. The MST Guide is the most comprehensive app for maps and navigation developed for the Mountains to Sea Trail, providing unprecedented information and ease of access for day hikers, section hikers, and through hikers. Never get lost again. Updated maps with trail route changes and everything you need from parking areas, camping locations, water sources, and more. Available now for download through Google Play and coming soon for the iPhone. Check it out and download today. The MST Guide by Pocket Trails. Follow the lines in the palm of your hand. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. You are listening to Jester Section Hiker, the premier podcast with the spotlight on section hikers. And I'm your host, Julie Jester Gayhart. This week, we continue our journey into learning more about the 1,175-mile Mountains to Sea Trail in North Carolina. Last week, we heard from Kate Dixon, who is the executive director for the Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail organization. And today, we have Jim Grode, who is the trail resource manager. You're going to hear how Jim got started with the Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail organization, all about the segment guides used when hiking this trail, and about his latest book titled Great Day Hikes on North Carolina's Mountains to Sea Trail. Before we get to our guest today, I wanted to make sure all of you knew about our latest update to the Hiking Radio Network website. We have a new look and an updated way for you to find all the podcast shows that belong to the network. If you go to hikingradionetwork.com, you will have access to all the shows. And if you click your favorite show, you will see how each show now has its own individual site. You can subscribe to all of your favorite shows so you never miss an episode, donate to your favorite show, leave reviews, and more. Thanks for coming back for another episode of the podcast, and now on to the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast, and please welcome with me Jim Grode, who is the trail resource manager for the Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail and editor of this awesome book we are going to be talking about today called Great Day Hikes on North Carolina's Mountains to Sea Trail. Thanks for joining me, Jim, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
All right. Just so the listeners know, I feel like I'm really geared up to talk to you, Jim, because I literally have the book in front of me, The Great Day Hikes. I have the Mountains to Sea Trail website open to the interactive map portion. And I also have these awesome, I'm going to call I guess it's a trail resource guide that there are 3 of these out there for the mountains, the Piedmont, and the coastal plain. So I'm geared up, Jim, but the purpose is to learn more about you right now. So tell us a little bit about who you are, maybe your hiking background, and how the Mountains to Sea Trail became so important in your life.
Sure. I grew up in Piedmont, North Carolina, in Charlotte, and as long as I remember, I was coming to the mountains and hiking every chance I got. It's just been a part of my life since I can remember. And I've been all over the state, all over the United States, and hiking is just sort of what I do.
So, do you have a particular passion specifically for North Carolina? Because I feel like you've been hiking a while and may have been around when this whole inception came about the Mountains to Sea Trail. Because on the last episode, Kate did such a great job talking to us about how the Mountains to Sea Trail idea came about, and literally over the past 43 years, how this trail has come a long way. So was that passion from the get-go?
Well, the mountains, I wasn't aware of the Mountains Sea Trail in 1977 when it was first proposed. I don't specifically remember when I first learned about the Mountains Sea Trail, but about 12 years ago when I moved up here to Asheville and found myself near the Mountains Sea Trail, I just found myself gravitating towards it and just loved the idea of this trail that captured all of the diversity of North Carolina, as it says, from the mountains to the sea. And so that became a passion within the last 10 years or so.
And that is phenomenal because you do live in what I call the hiking mecca of North Carolina. I mean, you're in Asheville. You are near all the 6,000 foot peaks. Basically, you're near the Black Mountains. You're near the Appalachian Mountains. I mean, you're near the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I mean, I could go on and on. So for you to gravitate towards the Mountains to Sea Trail is awesome. And within the last 12 years, how did you begin? Did you start volunteering with the organization? How did you become the trail resource manager?
I did start as a volunteer, and the first thing that I did on a volunteer basis was to hike it's actually no longer part of the trail. It's what we called segment 1B, the alternate route coming out of the Smoky Mountains, and hiked that to develop the first trail guide for that. Since then, we have rerouted it to the final route or close to a final route, and so that's no longer a part of it. But coming out of Silva up to the Blue Ridge Parkway was a former route that I mapped and described for the first time for the guide. And that then turned into additional contract work. And then I believe it was 2016, I came on as an employee and have been doing the guides and websites and other informational resources ever since.
And that is amazing. I can't even imagine putting a guide together. And I mean, phenomenal work. I don't know. I just visualize you, Jim, out on the trail, rolling one of those old time wheels where, you map out the mileage and all that good stuff. So before we get into your specific role as the trail resource manager, just out of my own curiosity, when you're mapping a trail, we could have a whole podcast about that, I am sure. Just give us a little bit taste of what that's like, because it can't be easy.
Well, so I don't use a wheel. I haven't used a wheel. There are some big advantages to using a wheel, and you get more precise mileages. But in today's age, I generally use GPS. So whenever I go out on the trail, I carry a couple of GPS devices, run my phone with the GPS, and none of those tracks that I record and get there is accurate. But if you combine them all and sort of average them out, you get something that's pretty close to being accurate. And then what I do while I'm on the trail is wherever I find something that I want to record, talk about, I take what I call a waypoint, and I take notes of it. At waypoint 001, you turn left at a T intersection or whatever it may be. And then when I get back home, I'll load that all into the computer and massage all the data, edit all the text, and come up with basically a spreadsheet of all of the information that I have about that trail keyed to those waypoints.
And that in and of itself to me is amazing. I mean, the trail maintainers, we take that work for granted. And, someone that's out mapping the trail for us. I mean, these days, a lot of the long distance trails are on the Gut Hook app. I mean, that takes a lot of work. And like you said, standing there at a waypoint, then going back and massaging the data. I mean, that is a lot of work. I'm very thankful that it's done, because I just open these wonderful books and I go, yeah, I already know where the coordinate is. I know how to get there. I know my highlights, all that kind of stuff. So give us a typical week as the trail resource manager for the Mountains to Sea Trail organization.
Well, so sadly, most of it's spent in front of the computer.
No, I want you to say you're on the computer. I mean, you're on the trail 24/7.
I am not. I do get out onto the trail typically for work. Every 2 or 3 weeks, I would say I'm out there doing something, whether it's just sort of maintenance, making sure the information is still up to date, or whether it's actually doing new segments or new sections of trail. I'm on average probably every 2 to 3 weeks I get out for a day or two, but that's about it. The rest of it, I do a lot of staring at Google Earth. I do a lot of staring at Excel spreadsheets and massaging, as I said, massaging data. It's not always as much fun as it might sound, but I'm also a bit of a data nerd, and so it's okay.
Well, I was going to say, Jim, obviously you love doing that, and I am very grateful and thankful for people like yourself that love to do that, because as a hiker, I benefit all the time from you. And I'm never going to forget this now. When I'm out there, I'm going to think about you massaging the data on the computer. So
don't do that. Think about the trail. Think about where you are. That's my goal, is to be silent in the background and for you to be out there to be able to really enjoy the trail safely and comfortably.
Well, we appreciate that. And thank you for your service on that. So as a hiker, let's just talk about someone who may not know a lot about the Mountains to Sea Trail. And probably as a hiker, the first thing I'm going to do is go to the website. I'm going to try to figure out where the guides are, and I'm going to try to figure out how to get to the trail. So from a trail guide perspective, I know now you have 3 printed guidebooks and some other resources. So go over that with the listeners.
Sure. So we have several resources on our website, as you mentioned. One is an interactive Google map that shows the entire trail from Clingman's Dome all the way out to Jockey's Ridge. It shows what parts of it are on trail, what parts of it are on road, and then it has various layers for different information sets. For instance, where is parking? We have a layer for parking, and you can find most of the major trailheads on that parking layer. So you can go to our website, you can find where you want to go hike, and then you can get directions to that point. So that's one of the resources. Those tie into our guides, which are available in printed form. There are 3 of them, as you said, for each region. They're also available from the website in PDF format for each of our individual 18 segments. And those give more information about planning a hike. So it's got where the trailheads are, where you can resupply, where you can find water, and then it has turn-by-turn directions, and they are literally, at mile 3.7, turn left, or whatever it may be. And so
and ladies and gentlemen, he's not kidding, because I'm actually looking at the book here. Like one of these says, past state park boundary sign and enter Mount Mitchell. Okay, you guys know where I'm looking at, Mount Mitchell State Park. And then one of the things I noticed here too, Jim, is that you have eastbound and westbound directions in these guides. That's phenomenal. You don't have to buy, a westbound book or an eastbound book. And I think that's great too. And this is also really good, not only for the hiker, but actually maybe for a family member that's going to pick them up and, share the weekend with that person that may not actually be hiking.
Yeah. I was going to mention that we have it in both directions. There's too much information there to necessarily use it on the trail all the time. I mean, you would not, sometimes these directions are 1/10 of a mile apart, and you wouldn't want to be staring at the book, walking and figuring out where you are every 1/10 of a mile. You just wouldn't enjoy the trail if you're doing that. But it gives you information that you can use, where the potential trouble points are. So when you get to those points, you can find them in the book and figure out where you need to go. And it's great for planning before you get onto the trail to figure out, where do people need to come pick me up? How far can I get today?
And I know one thing that you try to do too, Jim, and we talked about this before, is, and everybody knows this at this point if they're an avid hiker and will learn, it is extremely hard to keep these guides up to date, especially in print form. And I know you mentioned, this is the second edition of some of these guides. And as they were going to print, it was literally a change was being made in the trail. So talk to us a little bit about that, because I know you are furiously trying to make sure minimally that the website is updated.
Right. So we have an updates page on our website, mountainstoseatrail.org/updates. You can go there, and if there are detours, if we have rerouted the trail since the guide came out, if we find errors in the guide, I am notorious for switching left and right, and I think I've posted those where I say go left when I should say go right, but there may still be some out there, and we note that when we find them. And so we keep that up to date, and then as we get enough changes and or start running out of guides, we will update the printed versions of the guides and reprint. But that, as you can imagine, is a fairly expensive and time-consuming process. And so we can't do it every time there's a change. We have to kind of backlog them on the updates page. And then when we get to a critical mass, we can do that.
Well, that is perfect. And it gives people a little bit of insight to kind of what happens behind the scenes. So let's recap here a little bit. So what we've learned from Jim is that he loves the state of North Carolina. You have a vested interest in the Mountains to Sea Trail. And as an employee of the Mountains to Sea Trail organization, as the trail resource manager, you spend a lot of time, I'll just say, at the computer crunching data, doing things to make sure that people that are utilizing the website and the trail resources have up-to-date information. So, which I think is phenomenal. And every once in a while, they let you get out on the trail. So,
yeah.
So let's move on to this. When I say this book is phenomenal, and I said it in the last episode with Kate Dixon as well, this book is phenomenal. And we are going to move into talking about great day hikes on North Carolina's Mountains to Sea Trail. And Jim, so talk to us a little bit about, how did this book come about?
Sure. So Over the history of the Mountains to Sea Trail, there have been a number of guides that have been published. The very first one came out in 2000. It was by Alan DeHart, who was the first person to through hike the MST and one of the founders of Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail. And that was a very detailed, very good overview of the trail as it was in 2000. And very little of that is actually on the trail now. It's changed remarkably since that point, and it's great as a historical overview, but you couldn't follow the trail using it today. And if he were still around, he would be the first to admit that, I think. So I don't think I'm insulting him by saying that, but it definitely is a historical artifact. There were a few more that came out after that time, and again, they're all out of date. And we've touched on this, that by the time a book comes out, it's on a trail as dynamic as the Mountains to Sea Trail. We're adding about 15 miles of trail on average every year. A book is out of date almost before it comes out. And so we started thinking in about 2012, we started thinking about how do we make it easier to stay up to date. And that led to the guidebooks that you've seen, that we were talking about, these segment guides that are at least a little bit easier because we have them in PDF form to keep up to date, but there's still a substantial outlay of time. And more to the point, they're still geared toward the long distance hiker, the person who wants to, whether it's as a through hike or section hikes, wants to hike the entire trail from Clingman's Dome to Jockey's Ridge or vice versa. What we weren't reaching was the more casual hiker who wants to go out for 5 or 6 miles or even a couple of miles here and there and get a sense of the trail. And so as we started thinking about how can we reach those people, we thought about this idea of the day hikes. And we pitched it to UNC Press, who loved it, and we started moving forward with it. And earlier this year, the book came out.
And I got to tell, I mean, here I go again talking about this book. So literally, when you open this book, I mean, to me, I went straight to trailheads because I'm very interested, and it has coordinates. It's got beautiful colorful maps. And to me, this is a guide also not only for the day hiker, but for families. There, some of this is like a 0.7 mile hike in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park from one of the visitor centers. Very easy access. And another thing I love about this is it actually gives you like descriptions of what you're going to see and, what you might encounter on the trail and the terrain. So I've basically told everybody what the book's about, Jim. But with that being said, and what I'm alluding to with that is the ease of use. So my question is, how did you guys go? Because this is almost like a collaboration effort. How did you guys go about? It's almost like Google. Google looks so simple when you go onto their web. How did you guys make this so ease of use?
Well, that was our goal. Our goal was to make this something that was accessible to the average hiker. As you mentioned, we have trails as short or hikes as short as 0.7 of a mile. We actually have one that's 0.4 of a mile one way or 0.5 of a mile one way, but it has to be done as an out and back. So it's a mile long. And then we also have some that are definitely more challenging, but our goal was that anyone could pick up this book, understand what was going on, and use it to find a hike. And all the decisions that we made about how to put the book together, how to describe things, what information to put into the book, that all of those decisions were informed by that goal. And so you ask how we did it. Well, I mean, it was kind of easy once we made those decisions, because that was how we did it.
I mean, I'm thinking to myself, how do I become part of the next focus group that, maybe you'll utilize something out there like this? Because I mean, I just can't talk about this book enough. And even going into, I have not read all of the 40 hikes, but even the maps, Kate mentioned the gentleman that did maybe the picture maps in the book. I cannot remember his name right now.
Kurt.
Phenomenal. Kurt, yes. So phenomenal job with that. And did you guys just sit around at like a round table and say, okay, we have X amount of segments, which are 18. Let's hit the highlights. How did you decide the 40 hikes?
Yeah, so yes, we did. It was all by phone, but we had a group of people who were our book team, so to speak, and we bounced around ideas. We came up with criteria and categories that we wanted to try to do. And we used that to pick our 40 hikes. And there's a passage in the introduction to the book that says this better than I could possibly ad-lib it. So I'm going to read that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
To just tell you how we selected them. So this is from page 6, the introduction. This guide presents 40-day hikes carefully chosen from across the entire length of the MST, including 2 to 3 hikes from each of the 18 MST segments. They do not necessarily represent secluded areas or hidden gems of the trail, although some are, nor are they the most difficult portions, although a few will challenge most hikers, nor even the most scenic parts of the trail, although there is no shortage of stunning beauty represented in these pages. Instead, our goal in choosing these hikes is to capture North Carolina's great variety and diversity, from the mountains to the sea, from its past to its future, from wilderness to farmland to the city. We hope that a person who completes all the hikes in this book will encounter the entire North Carolina experience, its culture, its history, its landscapes, ecology, and geology, and its wonderful people. So that, in a nutshell, was our goal in choosing these 40 hikes. There were a few other criteria that we tried to incorporate. One was that, as I said, most of the hikes would be accessible to average hikers. And we average somewhere between 2 and 5 miles for most of the hikes. The longest one, which is significantly more challenging than anything else in the book, the one near Linville Gorge from Wolf Pit Road to Table Rock, is about 8.4 miles one way with about 3,500 feet of climbing. And so it's a challenging day hike. It also has a challenging shuttle. So it's almost easier to do it out and back, although you can do it by shuttle, but the shuttle takes an hour or two to set up. So it's almost easier to do it out and back if you have the stamina. But most of them aren't like that. Most of them are much more accessible. The other goal that we tried to do was to have them pretty evenly spaced out. And as I said, we have 2 to 3 from each of the 18 segments. And if you look at, there's a statewide map at the front of the book. And if you look at that, I think we did a pretty good job of getting them spaced out.
You did. I was going to say something about that state map because I'm obsessed with maps. I mean, literally, I'm obsessed. And I was opening the front of this book this morning, and even the way the trail travels through the state, some of these areas on the coast, I didn't realize it went to, the coast down below Jacksonville, and around, then around up to, Nags Head. So very evenly spaced. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. When you were reading that, I'm not kidding, I got chill bumps because I'm just so excited, for people to get their hands on this book. And not only that, but to experience, some different things in the state of North Carolina, because like you alluded to before, there's way more than through hiking. And, this podcast specifically is, speaks mostly to section hiking, but section hikers a lot of times are day hikers as well. So I got to be honest with you, Jim. Okay. So when I first bought this book, it was because of this challenge, this 40 hike challenge that we're going to talk about next. And I was like, oh, I could do the 40 hike challenge, no problem. But after I've been doing my research, talking with Kate, talking with you, and then next week we're going to have on our Mountains to Sea Trail section hiker. I mean, I've completely changed. Not only do I want to see everything in this book, but as a section hiker living in the state of North Carolina, Jim, I have no excuses. So I've got to complete this trail. So let's talk about this 40 hike challenge. Did that come up to coincide with the birthday, or is this always going to be its own separate challenge?
That's always going to be its own separate challenge. There is a connection with the birthday hike in that one of the birthday hike challenges is to get out and do one or more of these hikes. But the 40 hike challenge runs from now until March of 2023. And the goal is to hike all 40 day hikes in the book during that period. If you do that, we have a reward. And the way to find out about it is to go to mountainstoseatrail.org 40 hike challenge, or you can just go to the site and look for it on there. It's not too hard to find under challenges. You can find out the criteria for the challenge, and that's where we have the reporting form. So when you finish your challenge, that's how you let us know.
And that is phenomenal, because a lot of people, a lot of hikers, they hear the word challenge. And last week, Kate wants me to do some ultra marathon, 3 hike, triple crown, something or the other challenge. But I'm gonna get out on the trail. But I'm not sure about the triple crown. But the phenomenal things that you guys have done, the 40 hike challenge, coinciding this with the 43rd birthday of the Mountains to Sea Trail. And tell us how the listeners can find this book. Is it best to go to the Mountains to Sea Trail website and buy the book, or what does the Mountains to Sea Trail want people to do?
We want people to buy the book no matter what. If you go to our website, mountainstoseatrail.org, and click on store, you can get it through that. You can also get it through local bookstores, which we also encourage. You can get it from UNC Press directly, or you can get it from typical online retailers or outdoor stores.
All right. So, and this should put a big smile on your face, Jim, that during my conversation with Kate, we talked about how many copies of this actual book has sold. And I think we're going to assume through the Mountains to Sea Trail organization, over 500 books since February. So that should make you guys pretty happy, right?
Yeah, that's great. We have been so pleased with the numbers that we've been seeing. And we have no idea, as far as I know, how many have been sold through other outlets, directly through UNC Press or through bookstores or Amazon or anything like that. But we are so pleased at how well this book has done.
And I'm excited for you guys as the organization. I'm excited for you, all the work that you put into this. I mean, I am serious. I cannot say this enough. Everybody's going to get sick of me. It's just the ease of use. It makes you actually want to go out on the trail. So I, as a hiker on the buying end of this book, really, really appreciate that. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, Jim, and sharing kind of the processes that go into, your position as the trail resource manager, maintaining guidebooks, keeping things up to date, this awesome, great day hikes on North Carolina Mountains to Sea Trail. And Jim, I think we're at a good point where I will turn it over to you. And is there anything you want to leave the listeners with as far as the Mountains to Sea Trail goes, or getting out on hikes?
Yeah. So sometimes when I've come on podcasts or radio shows or book signing kinds of events, although they haven't happened as much as we had originally hoped. But one of the questions that comes up is if there's anything interesting that happened during the process of writing this book. And, sort of the amusing anecdote kind of thing. And when I first started thinking about that, my thought was, no, I don't really know of anything. But then something that came up to me sort of encapsulated this whole thing and why we did this. And that is, back sometime last year, I'd been in a meeting in Raleigh all day. I was on my way back to my home in Asheville. And one of the hikes that was in this book was one that I hadn't done yet. And I wanted to get a little more information about it. I had a fair amount of information, but needed a few more details. So I decided to stop on the way home. I was tired. I was in meeting shock. And this hike was in Hillsborough, the Hillsborough Riverwalk. And I got there late in the afternoon. The shadows were getting long. It was a beautiful day, temperatures in the 70s. And I started walking, and it was just this incredibly magical experience of being on the Greenway next to the Eno River, the variety just in this 2.5 mile hike of rivers and fields and forests and downtown Hillsborough and a reconstructed Native American village and an old NASCAR speedway. And honestly, this was a trail a hike that I hadn't had huge high hopes for, because it's in a city. You think about trails as being sort of this wilderness solitude experience. And it was one of the best hikes I've done in years. And a lot of it had to do with the circumstances, but a lot of it was just that you can find these kinds of experiences everywhere. And it was a real awakening to me and a real sort of rallying point around the book for me, trying to capture that as well as I could everywhere. And so my parting words would be, get out on the trail and find those magical moments for yourself.
Jim, thank you for leaving us with that vivid picture. We really appreciate it. And thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, and I really enjoyed it.
Next time all of you are out on your favorite trail, I hope you take a moment to think about how those trail maps are created, guidebooks are kept up to date, and how crazy it must be to keep up with the daily changes on the trails. Thanks, Jim, for sharing with us about your work for the Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail organization and the processes you go through to make sure hikers have up-to-date, accurate information when they go hiking. If you are anywhere near the state of North Carolina and have access to the MST, I recommend you add the book Great Day Hikes on North Carolina's Mountains to Sea Trail to your hiking library, and maybe take on the 40 Hike Challenge. Next week, our guest is not only a section hike completer of the Mountains to Sea Trail, but also a trail angel for the MST community. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please make sure to go check out our updated Hiking Radio Network website. And as always, happy section hiking.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me, and I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the what kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into. Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. So I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way. If you ever get lost, or if the trail leads you astray, the music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail. The ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way. Offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional-grade products. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.